I attended a job interview not realizing the CEO was a blast from my past. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I was already sweating through my only decent blazer when the door to the glass-walled conference room slid open and my past walked in wearing a tailored Navy suit and a CEO badge. Jordan Cole stopped mid-step, that same half-smirk freezing when our eyes locked, and for a second the whole polished office around us went silent. Nina, the recruiter, kept talking about culture fit like she hadn't noticed the air just turned radioactive. I forced my hand to stay flat on the table instead of closing into a fist. "My apologies, I didn't realize we'd met," Jordan said smoothly, like we were strangers who'd bumped carts at Whole Foods. That was a lie. I'd recognized the voice that derailed my 20s in my sleep. "Alex, right? Product strategy candidate." "Yeah," I said. "Didn't realize you were the Jordan Cole." Nina laughed too loudly. "Small world, right? I told you, Alex, everyone wants to work for visionary." She gestured toward the skyline behind him, the company logo glowing on a neighboring tower like a smug halo. What I didn't tell her was that I was currently underpaid, overworked, and one bad month away from moving back into my parents' cramped house. This job meant health insurance that actually covered therapy, a salary that could kill my credit card debt, and an escape hatch from my micromanaging boss who thought work-life balance was a punchline. I needed this, and Jordan knew it the second he saw me. I could feel the weight of every unpaid bill in my backpack. My phone, flipped face down on the table, buzzed once with a notification I refused to check. I had rehearsed answers about my strengths and weaknesses all week, but there was no script for sitting across from the one person who taught me how disposable I was. Jordan sat opposite me, folding his hands. "Well, given our shared history," he said lightly, "I'm curious to see if we can build something together again." Nina's eyes lit up. "Oh my God, you two know each other? That's amazing. See, fit." She said fit, like it solved everything, like history wasn't about to pull up a chair between us. The last time Jordan and I built something together, he walked away with my idea, and I walked away unemployed. I didn't know that by the end of this interview, one of us would be ruined. People always assume the worst thing a person can do to you is break your heart. Jordan didn't just break mine. He set my future on fire and then used the smoke as marketing. We met in college, both scholarship kids pretending we weren't counting every dollar in the dining hall. Back then, we were inseparable. Same late-night hackathons, same greasy pizza boxes, same dream about building something that would change how people worked. We called it Loom, a collaborative workspace app that blended project boards, chat, and documentation in one clean interface. I obsessed over user experience and accessibility. Jordan obsessed over pitches and investor decks. It worked until it didn't. Senior year, I got pneumonia and ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks. When I came back, Loom had a new logo, new code base, and a new founder listed on every slide. Created by Jordan Cole. "I kept it alive for us," he'd said back then, not quite meeting my eyes. "It was easier to sell a single founder story. You understand, right?" I didn't. But I understood the cease and desist email I got when I tried to launch my own version 6 months later. I understood when career fairs suddenly misplaced my resume after Jordan's smiling face showed up on tech blogs as the young visionary who built productivity's future from nothing. Friends told me it was just business, that I should let it go and build something new. They didn't see me refreshing my bank account at 3 in the morning, calculating whether I could afford both rent and student loans. They didn't see the way recruiters' faces changed when they realized Jordan and I came from the same program, and somehow only one of us was famous. Last month, his TED-style keynote floated across my feed, auto-playing without sound while I ate cold noodles over my sink. I watched him gesture at a slide that looked eerily like the prototype we'd sketched on a whiteboard at 3 a.m., my handwriting scrubbed out, his name in giant letters. I told myself I'd moved on, that my stable but boring product manager job was proof I'd survived. Now I was sitting in his building, wondering if surviving had ever really been enough. After Jordan left to let us get back to it, Nina's smile tightened around the edges. She shuffled her papers like they suddenly mattered. "So," she chirped, "let's continue with the behavioral questions. Tell me about a time you disagreed with leadership." I almost laughed. Instead, I fed her a polished story about pushing back on a poorly researched feature at my current company. She nodded, jotting something down, but her eyes kept flicking to the door like she expected Jordan to reappear at any second. When the formal questions ended, Nina leaned in. "Off the record," she said, dropping her voice. "This place moves fast. People who hang on to the past tend to struggle here." It sounded like a warning dressed up as career advice. On my way out, she handed me a sleek folder. "Just standard process stuff," she said. Inside was a pre-offer NDA, thick with tiny legalese, asking me not only to protect Visionary's secrets, but also to waive claims to any overlapping intellectual property, past, present, or future. I'd gone through interviews before, but I'd never been asked to sign something this aggressive before a second round. "Is this normal?" I asked. "Jordan likes things clean," Nina said. "If you're serious, sign it and send it tonight. It'll help us move quickly." I stepped out onto the sidewalk and sucked in air that tasted like exhaust and burnt coffee. Across the street, a barista in the lobby cafe wiped down tables while young engineers hunched over laptops, their Visionary badges glinting under the lights. For a second, I pictured myself among them, finally belonging to something shiny and important. Then I opened the folder again and skimmed the dense paragraphs about relinquishing past work. The phrasing was eerily specific, like someone had carefully imagined exactly the kind of mess Jordan and I had once made together. My heart pounded against my ribs, loud as a fire alarm nobody heard. As the elevator doors closed, my gut whispered that this was the first crack. That night, I spread the NDA across my kitchen table like it was an autopsy. The overhead light buzzed faintly. The fridge hummed. My brain tried to calculate what percentage of my soul the document wanted. I highlighted phrases that felt less like legal protection and more like erasure. Overlapping intellectual property. Prior work of similar nature. Waiver of claims. Whoever wrote this wasn't just cautious, they were scared. Tessa FaceTimed me from her couch, hair in a messy bun, cattail flicking past the camera. "You're making the lawyer face," she said. "That little wrinkle between your eyebrows is back." "It's not nothing," I said, tapping the paragraph with my pen. "This language is designed for someone specific. Someone like me." She squinted. "You think Jordan had this added because of Loom?" I didn't answer, but my silence seemed to be enough. The next morning, Nina emailed inviting me to a panel interview with key leadership scheduled for Friday. "Jordan insisted on being there," she wrote, like it was a treat. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on a neutral, looking forward to it. Friday morning, I ironed my shirt twice and took the train downtown, the city blurring past while my mind replayed every conversation Jordan and I had ever had about trust, ownership, and narrative. By the time I walked through Visionary's rotating doors again, my stomach felt like a clenched fist. The panel room was even more intimidating than the first. Floor-to-ceiling glass, a screen on the wall, 3 executives at the table. Jordan sat in the middle, hands steepled, expression unreadable. The others introduced themselves, COO, Head of People, VP of Product, but their names slid right off my brain. "Alex," Jordan said warmly, as if we were old friends grabbing brunch. "Ready to talk about your future?" As I took my seat, my phone buzzed in my pocket with a new LinkedIn notification. I ignored it for the moment, trying to steady my breathing. The preview showed 4 words that instantly froze every muscle in my body. The panel interview was a blur of jargon and veiled tests. They grilled me on roadmap strategy, conflict resolution, and how I handled failure. Jordan listened more than he talked, occasionally jumping in with a question that sounded neutral but carried teeth. "Tell us about a time you had to walk away from a project you loved," he said casually. "How did you handle the loss?" My throat went dry. I told them about a feature we sunsetted at my current job, carefully avoiding the word Loom. Jordan watched me like he was reading subtitles only he could see. Afterward, Nina walked me to the elevator. "They liked you," she said. "Jordan especially. He thinks you could own a big piece of an upcoming initiative." "Is that good or ominous?" I asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Around here, they're the same thing." On the train home, I did the math. My current job barely covered rent and student loans. My boss thought career development meant handing me his overflow tasks. Visionary's compensation range was almost double, plus equity, plus benefits that wouldn't make me fight with insurance over every therapist appointment. It wasn't just a job, it was a reset button. My mom left a voicemail about my little brother's braces, casually mentioning how things are tight for everyone right now, which was her way of asking if I could help soon. I stared at my checking account balance and tried not to calculate how many months of Help Visionary's salary could buy. That night, my manager texted asking if I could hop on a quick call to redo a deck he'd promised an executive by morning. No apology, no overtime, just entitlement. Tessa listened to me rant over the phone. If you can stomach working with Jordan, maybe you take the money, she said. You're allowed to be selfish. I don't know if this is selfish or suicidal, I said, pacing circles around my coffee table. A minute later, my email pinged with a subject line from Nina, verbal feedback plus next steps. At the bottom, Nina wrote that Jordan wanted me alone tomorrow. Before I answered Nina, I finally opened the LinkedIn message that had been burning a hole in my notifications. The sender's name was blocked out by "member is no longer available," but the preview remained. Working here ruined my life. The full message was longer, rushed and anxious. Don't trust anything they say about culture, it read. Projects disappear. People disappear. NDAs are weaponized. If you have history with coal, run. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. It could have been a troll, an ex-employee with an axe to grind, someone projecting their own disaster onto me. Still, my thumb hovered over the report button and never clicked. Instead, I pulled up Visionary's press page, scrolling through years of glossy headlines. Jordan on magazine covers, Jordan shaking hands with investors, Jordan talking about democratizing productivity. Buried between the hype was a 3-year-old article about their flagship platform release. The screenshots looked painfully familiar. Columns of tasks, threaded comments, a contextual notes sidebar that had started as my messy sketch during a caffeine crash. The launch date made my stomach flip. It lined up almost exactly with the final time Jordan and I fought over Loom, right before his cease and desist arrived. I bounced over to anonymous review sites. Former employees complained about sudden restructurings, disappeared projects, and leadership obsessed with optics over integrity. One comment mentioned a founder with a habit of rewriting history to star himself. I dug through my old email, fingers shaking as I searched Loom prototype and Jordan. Attachments opened, wireframes with my annotations, feature lists, a shared doc titled V2 Vision, where my comments had been resolved into silence. For years, I told myself I was being dramatic, that productivity apps all looked alike, and I didn't own Kanban boards or comments. But here, laid out in high-resolution marketing copy, were details so specific they felt like scenes from a stolen diary. As I accepted the meeting invitation, I stopped feeling like a candidate. Jordan's informal conversation turned out to be a day-long culture immersion, which was corporate code for unpaid work. Nina handed me a visitor badge and a schedule that looked like a mini onboarding. We just want you to get a feel for the place, she said. Shadow a few people, sit in on stand-ups, see if it's a mutual fit. My first stop was a product team daily stand-up. Engineers rattled off updates in rapid-fire shorthand. On the wall monitor behind them, a dashboard displayed active initiatives. One card caught my eye. Project Loomis, Q4 Rescue Plan. Loomis, I repeated quietly. The engineer next to me, a guy with dark circles under his eyes and a coffee 4 vibe, shrugged. Internal code name, he said. Legacy platform refactor. Don't touch it unless you like headaches. Later, Nina parked me at an empty desk with access to a read-only internal wiki. Feel free to click around, she said. Jordan wants you to understand the product history. The history was edited. Early documents credited founding team without names. Screenshots from the first versions of the platform were conveniently low resolution, but I could still make out layouts that matched my old Figma files almost exactly. In one meeting note from years ago, someone had left a comment. Asked JC about original collaborator? The comment was marked as resolved by Jordan himself. Around lunchtime, a tall guy in a rumpled button-down paused by my desk. You're Alex, right? He asked. I'm Marcus. Jordan said you're the maybe new strategy brain. Temporary brain, I said. I'm still deciding if I want to be here. He smirked. That already makes you smarter than most. When Nina ducked out to take a call, Marcus leaned against the desk. Word of advice, he murmured. This company has ghosts. Some of them used to work here. I asked him what he meant, and he glanced around like he expected the glass walls to grow ears. For a second, he seemed to debate whether to trust me. When he spoke again, the story he hinted at sounded dangerous. A few years ago, Marcus said quietly, there was a guy here who wouldn't shut up about how the platform wasn't entirely Jordan's idea. Smart, annoying, very principled. He started asking questions about early commits, missing attribution, mysterious changes to the story. My pulse picked up. What happened to him? Officially, he pursued opportunities elsewhere. Unofficially, legal sat him down with a stack of paperwork and reminded him who owned his stock options. Marcus shrugged, but his eyes were sharp. He left with a decent severance and a gag order. I swallowed. So Jordan likes things quiet. He likes things controlled, Marcus said, which is why it's interesting that he's suddenly desperate to save Loomis. He pulled up a dashboard on his screen and tilted it toward me. Red numbers glared from every corner. Churns up. Enterprise clients are complaining about stability issues. Investors are asking why the visionary platform looks suspiciously like every other tool now. They need a turnaround story before the next board meeting. And that's where I come in. Marcus tapped the screen where Loomis, Q4 rescue plan, sat under his cursor. Jordan told people he'd found someone who understands the original spirit of the product better than anyone. People assumed he meant some industry guru. He looked at me. I'm guessing he meant you. My chest felt tight. So Jordan didn't just want to hire me. He wanted to plug me into the very thing he'd stolen, like a missing component he could finally afford to acknowledge privately. Marcus hesitated. There's also talk of a potential lawsuit from a former enterprise client, he said. They're claiming misrepresentation about uptime and security. If the platform crashes again, someone's going to eat it publicly. My name on a press release could easily become my name in a complaint. For Jordan, a fall guy with credibility would be a convenient life raft. Suddenly, being needed here felt less flattering and more like a crosshair. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my floor with my laptop open and a shoebox of old drives and notebooks dumped out beside me. I hadn't looked at most of it in years. Somewhere between the coffee stains and post-it notes was the version of me who believed collaboration meant trust. I started with my email archives. Search terms, Loom, Vision Doc, Jordan, Prototype. Threads unfurled. There were attachments showing timestamps months before Visionary existed, Figma links with my name at the top, messages where Jordan thanked me for doing the heavy lifting on UX so he could sell the dream. I downloaded everything into a new encrypted folder labeled Taxes because I'm not creative when I'm terrified. Next, I dug up our old group chat logs from college. Screenshots of Jordan asking if he could borrow my pitch deck to show a visiting investor. Me sending a PDF at 3:14 a.m. Adding, please don't share this outside the team yet. His thumbs up reaction. 3 days later, a message that read, great meeting, we'll catch you up later, with no further explanation. The more I scrolled, the more a pattern emerged. Me creating, Jordan packaging, me trusting, Jordan editing me out of the story one decision at a time. I called Tessa and put her on speaker. If I wanted to prove someone built their empire on my work, I said, what would I need? Dates, she said immediately. Original files. Any witnesses. Bonus points if you have something in writing where he admits the collaboration. I stared at a message from Jordan dated February 12th, 20XX. Couldn't have done this without your vision, man. Seriously. I saved that twice. Then I researched whistleblower policies, board oversight, and what happens when founders are accused of fraud. Some stories ended in justice. More ended in settlements and ruined careers for the people who spoke up. My laptop fan whirred like it was anxious on my behalf. I wasn't sure if I was building leverage or lighting a fuse. Jordan chose a hotel bar for our informal conversation, the kind with dim lighting and velvet chairs that make you forget what time it is. He arrived 10 minutes late. No apology, just a practiced grin and a clap on my shoulder like we were brothers. Alex, he said, sliding into the booth. You look good. Older, but good. Tom does that, I said. So does working 70-hour weeks. He ordered us drinks without asking what I wanted. I'll get right to it, he said. The team loved you. I think you're exactly what we need to bring Visionary back to its roots. Our roots, I said, before I could stop myself. For a split second, his smile wobbled. Then it returned, brighter. Look, I know there's history, he said. We were kids. We made mistakes. I should have communicated better back then. But we're adults now. We can rewrite the story. Rewrite, I repeated. That's one way to describe what happened. He leaned in. You come on board. I give you VP of product within a year. Big equity. Public credit for turning Loomis around. People will know your name, not just mine. And if I say no? His eyes cooled. You'll find something else eventually, he said. But this industry is small, Alex. Founders talk. Investors talk. It's easier for everyone if we align narratives instead of dredging up old misunderstandings. Old misunderstandings was a polite way of saying, don't make me ruin you. He lifted his glass for a toast. To second chances, he said. My hand hovered, then clinked his out of reflex. The sound was small, but it echoed in my chest like a warning bell. Later, on the phone, Tessa was furious. He threatened you, she said. That was a threat with extra syllables. As we talked, a text from an unknown number popped up. If you need a witness, I've seen enough. M. I stared at Marcus's initial on the screen, heart racing. For the first time, the idea of fighting back felt possible. The real question was whether I dared to use what I knew. The next day, I emailed Nina before I could lose my nerve. Thank you for the opportunity, I wrote. But before I can accept any offer, I'd like to present a short strategy overview for Loomis to the broader leadership group. It'll help us confirm expectations on both sides. She replied within minutes. Jordan loves proactivity. I'll see what I can arrange. Marcus and I grabbed coffee in a shop 2 blocks from the office, far away from Visionary's badge scanners. He slid into the booth, looking more awake than I'd ever seen him. You're sure you want to do this? He asked. No, I said. But I'm more tired of pretending this is normal. We sketched out a plan on napkins. I'd build a Loomis turnaround deck that highlighted the platform's original differentiators, features that traced directly back to my old Loom documents, along with a timeline of how those ideas evolved. Every slide would be sourced. Every innovation, Jordan claimed since founding Visionary, would have a breadcrumb leading somewhere inconvenient. And the audience? Marcus asked. I want the VP of product there, I said. Maybe a board observer if Nina can swing it. HR, too, under the pretense of aligning role scope. Marcus whistled. You're not playing small. Jordan never did, I said. I spent the weekend buried in PowerPoint purgatory, stitching together my evidence into something that looked like a normal product strategy pitch. To anyone skimming, it would read as an ambitious plan to rescue a struggling platform. To anyone looking closely, it would be a quiet indictment. Slide notes held file names, timestamps, and quotes ready to be read aloud if anyone questioned my conclusions. On Sunday night, Nina confirmed the meeting for Wednesday afternoon, adding one extra line that made my palms sweat. Jordan requested the largest conference room so the board rep can sit in. Either way, there would be witnesses I couldn't uninvite later. This time, I wasn't sure whether that was a blessing or a trap inside my trap. Wednesday afternoon, the largest conference room turned out to be a glass box overlooking the city, long table polished to a mirror. Jordan sat at the head, flanked by the VP of product, the head of people, Nina, Marcus, and a woman I didn't recognize in a blazer too sharp to be anything but board adjacent. Thanks for putting this together on short notice, Jordan said, voice smooth. Everyone, this is Alex, our potential strategic hire for Loomis. I almost laughed. I plugged in my laptop, palms slick, and brought up the first slide. Loomis turnaround, returning to the original vision. Jordan's eyes narrowed just a fraction. I walked them through user complaints and churn numbers, then clicked to a timeline. To understand where we need to go, I said, we have to look at where this platform came from. The next slide showed an early mock-up of the product from an old investor deck, credited to Visionary. Side by side with it, I placed a screenshot of a college-era prototype from my email, timestamp clearly visible. Nina shifted in her chair. The board woman leaned forward. These layouts are similar, she said. They're identical, I corrected. Down to the accessibility panel and contextual notes sidebar. The second image predates Visionary by 18 months. It's from a project called Loom that I co-founded with Jordan in college. Silence dropped over the room like a curtain. Jordan laughed once, sharp. Come on, Alex, he said. We all borrow from our early work. You shared some ideas, sure, but Visionary is my company. You were never part of this team. I clicked again, revealing a slide filled with quotes from his old messages thanking me for building our product's backbone. My cursor hovered over the timestamp on one particularly incriminating email. The bored woman looked from the screen to Jordan, her expression cooling by several degrees as she folded her hands and asked him to explain why his story didn't match the dates in front of us. For the first time, Jordan's composure cracked in front of his own people. What followed didn't look like one big explosion so much as a series of controlled detonations. The board representative, her name was Evelyn, I learned, asked a few more pointed questions about governance, attribution, and why no co-founder appeared on any of the company's official materials. Jordan's answers got shorter, then more defensive, then wrapped in so much jargon they barely qualified as sentences. At some point, Nina started taking furious notes. The head of people asked HR-flavored questions about historical agreements and documentation of contributions. Marcus kept his face neutral, but under the table his foot tapped a frantic rhythm. When the meeting finally broke, Jordan asked me to stay behind. Everyone else filed out slowly, eyes refusing to quite meet mine. The door clicked shut. You blindsided me, he said, the smoothness gone from his voice. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? How you look, I corrected. I showed them facts. Dates. Your own words. He paced to the window, jaw tight. You think the board cares about your little college project? He snapped. They care about numbers and risk. You just painted yourself as both. For a second, fear flared, hot and blinding. If he spun this right, I could become the unstable almost hire trying to shake down a successful founder. But Evelyn knocked once and opened the door before he could continue. Jordan, she said calmly, we'll need to schedule a separate session with legal to review these materials. Her gaze slid to me. Alex, I'd also like to speak with you individually. Jordan's nostrils flared. That won't be necessary if Alex and I come to an understanding privately, he said. Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. Actually, she replied, that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. By the time I got home, an email from Nina was waiting, letting me know they were pausing all hiring decisions related to Loomis pending an internal review. My almost offer had evaporated into corporate fog. Rent was still due. My current boss still expected me in the morning. I was terrified I'd just nuked my best shot at escape. For once, he wasn't the only one rewriting the narrative anymore. The internal review crawled forward in the background of my life like a slow, ominous progress bar. Evelyn scheduled a Zoom with me, this time with a company lawyer present who mostly listened and took notes while I shared my files. I sent them copies of emails, timestamps, and the old prototypes. Every upload felt like dropping another brick onto a scale I couldn't see. At work, my boss noticed something was off. If you're interviewing somewhere else, he said one afternoon, at least have the courtesy not to emotionally check out here. I'm not checked out, I said. I'm just reconsidering what I'm willing to tolerate. He rolled his eyes, but something in me had shifted. I stopped answering late-night texts. I updated my resume with other companies, smaller but saner, and reached out to contacts who didn't worship founders as untouchable geniuses. Tessa finally convinced me to try therapy. You keep telling this story like Jordan owns it, she said. Maybe start by telling it to someone who isn't trying to monetize it. My therapist, a calm woman with kind eyes and an impressive collection of cardigans, asked me a question I didn't expect. What would accountability look like for you that doesn't hinge on Jordan groveling? I thought about it on the bus home. Maybe it meant a formal acknowledgement of my work, maybe a settlement, maybe just knowing that future investors would read a memo that said, this founder has a history of erasing collaborators. Maybe it meant walking away and building something that he couldn't touch this time. In the meantime, I set small, stubborn boundaries. I visited my parents and told my mom I couldn't be the emergency fund for everyone anymore. I made a budget that didn't require a miracle job to stay afloat. I cooked something that wasn't instant noodles. Weeks passed. Visionaries stayed silent publicly. Corporations are good at silence. Then, one Monday morning, I opened my email to find a message from an unfamiliar domain. The subject line mentioned Jordan by name and something about resolution talks. The email was from an outside law firm representing Visionaries Board, not Jordan. They wanted to discuss potential resolution regarding historical contribution claims related to the Loomis platform. Attached was a PDF with proposed talking points and a very polite request that we keep communications confidential. Evelyn joined the Zoom, not Jordan. She looked more tired than before, but her voice stayed steady. "We've reviewed the materials you provided," she said. "Regardless of what was or wasn't formalized in the past, it is clear your work meaningfully influenced the early product." The offer on the table wasn't an apology wrapped with a bow. It was messier, a financial settlement, a formal internal memo acknowledging me as an early collaborator whose contributions had been inadvertently omitted from public history, and a clause requiring Jordan to step back from direct product leadership for a year while governance changes rolled through. There was also a mutual non-disparagement agreement. No telling the internet that Jordan Cole was a thief. No victory lap thread on Reddit. No TED Talk of my own. I took a week to decide. I walked by the river. I made lists. Tessa argued for vengeance. My therapist argued for sustainability. My bank account quietly argued for survival. In the end, I signed. But I also turned down the job Jordan had dangled. I accepted a role at a smaller company with a founder who had actually built their product in public with a visible team. Lower salary, less prestige, more sleep. Sometimes I still see Jordan's face on a podcast thumbnail or a conference poster. I know there's a file somewhere in Visionary's board archives with my name on it now, a tiny correction taped to the bottom of his legend. If you're listening to this because you've been erased or steamrolled or told your side doesn't matter, here's what I learned. Choose the version of justice that lets you keep living your life, not just winning the argument. I don't know exactly where it leads, but this time I'm steering.